right, we're in business. Well, thank you guys all for being here on a Friday afternoon to learn about Twitter. Actually, we're going to talk more about social media, way beyond just Twitter, but we'll probably end up talking about Twitter like that. So thank you guys. It's awesome to see a lot of people that are interested in this. And like Megan was saying, that feedback survey is super important to me because one of the things that I personally am being asked to do a lot more of is these kinds of trainings all across campus. We're getting more and more interest from people of all levels, but especially grad students and postdoc students about how they can use social media as a communications tool to effectively talk about science and participate in conversation and all the benefits that come with it. So your feedback is super, it goes beyond just the Speak series. It has a much bigger impact. So real quickly about myself, so you know why the heck I'm up here and talking to you. I'm the social media strategist here at UC Davis. So my role is really twofold. One, I manage the team that does all of the content behind the UC Davis main social media channels. So we're Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, all of those. But I also do a lot of trainings and tool development for all of our science communicators, but also for students and faculty about how everybody at UC Davis can kind of level up our social media game. Because the more we're all participating in all of the conversations at every level, the better it is for everyone. And the better it is for UC Davis. So previously I had 10 years of experience working for all sorts of different kinds of clients. I worked at some PR and marketing firms. So I've worked with Mars and Coca-Cola, and I've cut my teeth on some other kind of clients when social media was just that kind of thought that was like, hey, aren't those people blogging in their basement? It's taken a large, I think social media is ever more important in the communications landscape. And we're going to talk about that today. So specifically, we're going to zone in, because social media is a huge topic. We're really going to zone in on why social media can matter to you professionally as an individual. We're not going to talk so much about how to use it as an organization, though a lot of the concepts move across. So if you're doing any social media communications on behalf of a department, they apply, but we're really going to focus in on some of the details that as an individual that you can professionally use it for. We're also going to root ourselves in some values of social media, and we will have time to talk about specific technical aspects about specific channels, but the channels change a lot. Technology is changing every day. It feels like there's a new announcement on Facebook algorithm, or Twitter or Snapchat is just going to redo itself. So instead of worrying about all the technical changes, because that can give you a lot of heartburn, and it's nobody's full-time job in here except for mine to keep up on those, what we're going to do is root ourselves in some main values, and those can be applied no matter what the technical changes are. We're going to talk about some best practices for science communicators, specifically online, and then we're going to have an exercise and do some discussion afterwards, so we can just open the floor up. I can plug my phone in, and we can look at some live situations online. You could even see the back end of Twitter for UC Davis, so we'll hope to save some time for that. Okay, so real quickly, and I'm sorry, this is a little hard to see up here, but I want to ground ourselves a little bit in why this matters in the media, communications, information landscape, and what your role as a researcher and part of this great institution that we're all part of, where you can have a role and an impact. So over the past 10 years, probably more, as we've seen the online revolution and social media revolution really take hold, it's really changing the way that we as consumers, specifically I'm talking in the United States, but I think this applies globally, consume information. And I don't think this would be surprising to anybody, but the gap between how we're receiving news in particular has really narrowed between even this is 2016 to 2017, from those people who are mostly receiving their news from television to online, and you see that we're moving into a place where more and more people are coming online and less are going to the television. I don't think that would surprise anybody in this room, but what has been really interesting is the main age group that's moving from here to here, or rather from television to online, are people over the age of 65. So I think there's sometimes a misnomer, especially with online or mobile or social media, that it's all for the kids or it's younger generations, but that is not the truth at all. We have everybody at all socioeconomic and all age groups are now starting to really rely on online forms of information. But we also see that it's not just online and it's not just mobile, but specifically social media is playing a big, big role in how people are getting news links fed to them. So that could still be a Washington Post article, but it's coming, you're consuming that or you're being exposed to that via social media. And what this also tells us is, skipped ahead a little bit, is that influence has changed a little bit too. So are you going to WashingtonPost.com to get your news, or are you getting it fed to you via social media? So things have changed. The other piece of this is Pew Foundation came out with a really interesting scientific, some numbers specifically about science news and where people are trusting science news as it is reported in the news media. And what we're seeing is that generally people are skeptical of science news as it's reported in the mainstream media. Now, the world has changed in the last year. There's a lot more discussion about fake media. We've had a lot more exposure about things like Russian bots and fake profiles. And so I think that this is reflective of that people are starting to be a little bit more skeptical of the news that they're receiving, specifically even when it comes to scientific news. Excuse me, this is social media users, very specifically, not just online consumers. But who we trust, so in that environment, who we trust and what we think of as important has really changed over the last 10 years. So we are looking at an environment now where Americans are turning to online and social media for news and information. They're increasingly skeptical of said information because of the overwhelmingness and all the recent news. And so we do the most human thing that we always do. We trust our friends, we trust our family, and we trust experts. So things like the Washington Post or the New York Times or trusted outlets are actually enjoying a lot of success online because they are coming up above the fray. For better or worse, there's many arguments within there. But I think that's a pretty interesting place because, and why this is relevant to all of you in this room, is you guys are becoming the experts in your field. You are credible researchers from a credible institution, and you have a place in this discussion and a place and a voice in this discussion because you have that credibility that you're working on. So I think as UC Davis, we're trying to encourage those people who are interested in engaging in this space on an individual basis that your voice matters and that you can play a really impactful role online. And that you're a little bit different than just Joe Schmo going up on Twitter and talking about what they ate for breakfast that morning. You actually have something credible to say. So that it's a really interesting environment that we're living in, but you can actually benefit from it. So with all of that, I think I want to talk a little bit about what are the benefits to you as a person to get online. I'd love to understand from you, excuse me, I'm actually jumping around a little bit. Are there any, sorry, I'm gonna jump ahead really quick, thanks. So I wanna understand from you guys, hold on. Sorry, my thing is out of order. Okay, sorry, back on track. So this is kind of what we're encouraging people to think about in their online, their tool of commerce, of communications, And we've kind of coined the term social media scientist. Now, I know there are some problems with that, so if you have a better name, let me know. But for lack of a better term, what we're talking about are scientists and researchers who are using one or more social media channels to, in a professional capacity, to share research and engage in conversations about their field of research. So I think a lot of you in the room are actually already on Twitter or Instagram, yeah? Show of hands, yeah? Okay. So you would be considered what we're calling a social media scientist. And these are people who are, these are a couple of my favorite people. I love Ann Hilborn. We'll look at an example from her later. But they just are showing what they're doing in the field, the good and the bad of science, the scientific process. Who is a scientist? It's not just a guy in a lab coat in the lab. Like, you're out in the field, you're doing things. So, and partaking in a lot of the conversations that are online. But, you know, so there's a lot of benefits to being a social media scientist. Who, like, I'd love to hear from you guys, what you guys have, if you've already experienced benefits, or what the perceived benefits are that you think to getting online. Anyone? Yeah?
Collaborating with other scientists
Uh-huh.
who are researching similar things to you. I work for the Delta Stewardship Council, so I help a lot of scientists in our science program.
Mm-hmm.
And just introducing things like hashtags salmon into your research or day-to-day can spark new ideas for scientists, or help you find new people to connect with, network with.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? That's good. Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who are not involved in science in any way, and just kind of them seeing the kind of stuff that I did, especially when I was working in the field, excited them about what I was doing and made them approach me when we were face to face with questions about it.
Yeah. Good. Good. Like
the rapid sharing of information through all these networks, you can just spreads like crazy really fast. You can get the word out really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a desirable skill that employers look for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, all of the above. So there's some altruistic benefits. Obviously, educating the public. There was $140 million of publicly funded research in 2016. Kind of like owe it to them if you have any NSF funding. They're actually asking to know how you're communicating that back out to the public that you are influencing. So we know that there is a perceived public benefit. So can we get the public more scientifically literate? That's a big goal, but you are contributing to that. You could be a role model. You can break stereotypes and assumptions about science, because there are a lot about them, and the scientists, if you will. There are also some, that's all great and high and mighty and wonderful, but there are also some immediate personal benefits. We have talked to a lot of researchers here. You're able to capture the attention of the media if you're in the right place at the right time and you're credible and you're active. That has happened, and I'll take you through an example in the next slide. We have heard from people that it drives funding, grants, donors, jobs. You can hire people for your lab. You can get hired. So by the connections that you're making, and great networking, if you're going to conferences, you can connect with people and keep up with people's connections. You can receive feedback loops and get inspiration for ideas in your research. So all of these things are actually personal benefits that you can take advantage of as well. It's not all save the world as well. But social media isn't risk-free, and I'd love to hear from you guys what some of the risks or hesitations, and I know we asked in a prompt email before, but I'd love to hear from you guys what things could hold you back from doing social media. What hesitations?
Trolls. Time consuming.
Trolls, time, yes. Top two. What else?
Expertise.
Expertise, what do you mean by that?
So, like, it's not common knowledge here to like use like a hashtag or how to incorporate it into your 140, which is now 280 characters, or why images on a Twitter post would be important when you're tagging your constituency, or expanding past what you would consider your target audience. And maybe your audience isn't the person who you're tagging with the followers.
Yep. Okay. Lots of questions. I also hear a lot that it's so fast moving, or like the technology is changing so much, it feels a little bit like a barrier to human entry. Okay. Yeah.
Some hesitations people submitted on the form are politics, privacy, how to prevent silly posts that we may regret in the future because the internet never forgets, security, being wrong, misconceptions, and how to get quality without sacrificing time and being correct and accurate.
Anybody else wants to add to that?
Yeah, this would be we're considering an department Twitter account, and that's kind of daunting.
Yeah.
Because there are several of our faculty that works on climate change, which is for some reason it's been politicized.
Yeah, right.
So, we just had an article come out the other day about rebuttal to climate change deniers, and you're going to get, we got a lot of, it's a very controversial subject.
Yeah.
And it becomes extremely uncomfortable sometimes to talk about these things in this kind of forum where faculty has been threatened on their life from people, and it can be really difficult to handle.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
It's tricky.
And who's gonna do the rebuttal?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, if anybody has gotten death threats, you need to call me. No, I'm being serious. Like, it's not the first time that I've dealt with doxers or people doing that. So, but we need to know. So if that really is happening, like, we need to know. And I'll hand out my card. Secondly, like, it's not, you're not going into necessarily this warm, comfortable bubble online. You are going to be going into an environment where people have, and this is the thing about social media, it's social, it goes both ways, right? So if you want to go into an environment where nobody can talk back to you, that's called marketing. It's called an advertisement. It's called a billboard, right? So those are the risks that you have to kind of like, and I hear this all the time. One thing I didn't hear, which maybe it's my own buzz, is that it's addictive. And that something that I also hear from researchers across the board is that people, I guess it's not up here, but people feel like if they're doing Twitter professionally that they're wasting time or they will be perceived as not working. We're hoping to change that culture here because we see it as working. But I think, again, that's a very multi-layered issue. Did you have something?
Yes, another thing is that I know all of my friends are leaving Facebook. So the people who I'd be wanting to reach are less available.
Yeah, they're usually moving to another channel though. But yeah, sometimes. Okay, we'll tackle that in a second. We're going to talk about a lot of these issues, but I want to be really straight with you guys that you're never going to move into this like soft warm place online. You have to be willing to take on some of that risk. And one of the biggest risks here is that you now stand for something. You are now out there. And you're searchable, you're findable. And that can be a good thing, and that can be a hard thing too. But you're never without support. So that's one of the roles that I play. One, I read all the hate mail for the university, so I've seen it all. And two, I've also been working in this space, so we have a team that can help with a lot of these issues. So if you ever get yourself in a pickle, you can call me, okay? You have a safety net. And we can help response and legal and all that good stuff, okay? Okay, so with that being said, let's ground ourselves in some social media values, because if we're going to go out into this space, let's do it in the right way as best you can. You're going to make mistakes. The great thing is on social media, if you can mitigate how big those mistakes are, little mistakes like a tech mistake or a typo or something like that, it's okay. It's actually quite acceptable in this space. But there are some other big things that we want to prevent from the get-go. Okay, so one of the core values that I always talk about, and if you see me talk about any other thing, I'm going to harp on this, is that I use an analogy of social media to a party, okay? So it's all about relationships. You go to a party and you know, as if you're going to host a party, so you clean your house, you put out the wine, you talk to other people, you welcome guests as they come through the door, you talk to them, you have activities, you have an interest. And also, if you're at a party and you're just talking about yourself, you're not connecting with people, right? Like nobody wants to go and talk to somebody who's only talking about themselves, right? So it's the same principle online, okay? Social media is all about, less about all of the things that you're trying to reach people with your message, and it's more about making those actual connections with people and that build that connective tissue, okay? So if you can think about, if you can shift your thinking about it that way, that actually helps you do things like get more followers, reach new audiences, engage and get real value from the space. What we've sometimes been primed to do is think about social media as if it's just another marketing channel, okay? And nobody likes that, right? So that's one of our first values. That leads into the second value. It's all about listening, okay? So again, marketing, it's not all about marketing, it's not all about my message and what all the content that I'm putting out, because that's a lot of the, and you see it in workshops too, how to build your social media content and all that stuff. It's about listening, seeing what other people have to say, going down those rabbit holes, and we'll talk about how to do that. So it's often the step that gets misstepped. And actually, on this one, I have to tell you guys that UC Davis is absolutely guilty of this. From our main channels, when I came on board, that was one of the first things that we looked at is like, we are just marketing. We're treating it like an ad channel. We're not treating it as an input channel. And that was doing us a huge detriment. So very tentatively, we're still working on that.
Are you going to get back to that subject?
Oh, sure, you can ask questions.
Well,
Sorry, yeah.
Interrupting you.
No, it's good.
So how are we going to do that? How are you going to create that? Not marketing, but engaging the other way around.
Yeah, it's about being active listeners to our audiences, actually replying to comments.
How about when you don't get comments? I mean, how can you make a post that is actually encouraging comments then?
Yeah, so the easiest thing is ask a question. Yeah, ask a question, ask feedback. But the other thing that we're really working to do is sometimes what we do is we get in our own channel. So I kid you not, some people are like, okay, I'm going to create a Twitter handle, and I put out a tweet, and then they come up to me and they say, did you see my tweet? I'm like, no. Okay, there's millions of tweets every hour. Like, come talk to me, tag me, come out of your own channel and engage in the conversation. We're going to get around how do you actually do that. So we're going to get there. Okay, so the other point I want to make and the other value I want to kind of install in everybody here is that social media is a journey, okay? Like I said, you're not going to put one tweet out there and the world's going to be like, oh my God, that's amazing. I love your tweet. I'm going to put you on the New York Times.
I'm going to tweet you right now.
No.
Like
as long as you're not videoing.
This is like a fractal structure. Let's tweet this out.
Oh, thanks. Get out of here.
Okay.
Okay, talk about Twitter extraordinaire. Okay, but my point here is that you have to commit to this and you have to feed it. You're going to get what you put into it. Okay, it's not lightning in a bottle. And we get a lot of, I understand there's a lot of time commitments with it, and we're going to talk about, like, are there snippets of time that you can commit to it? But if you are only going to do it once every 3 months, like, you're not going to get that. You're going to get what you put into it. And a perfect example of that is my idol, Professor Elizabeth Stroh. She probably doesn't know that I idolize her, but I do. She is a professor in our law school. And if you don't follow her on Twitter, you should. But I think it was like 5 years ago, she started contributing to a group blog called The Life of Blog. And she was just getting her feet wet, just a couple blogs a year. And then she decided, you know what, I'm going to get on Twitter because there's a lot of conversation about the things that I care about, which is law and technology, not intersection. And there's a lot of conversation and interesting things happening on Twitter. So she got on Twitter, she started establishing herself. Again, we're talking about 4 or 5 years ago, okay? And she's very intentional with the way that she professionally uses Twitter. She talks about, she stays in her professional lane. She talks about how it's basically life through Elizabeth Jo's lens, okay, and her professional lens. She talks about a little bit of things here and there and some other personal stuff, but not much. It's mostly on point. So she's really established herself as a really credible person in this particular field. Okay, so back in, I think it was 2016 now, or was it 2015? There was that sniper in Dallas. Do you guys remember when that happened? And the police force sent in a robot, a military robot, who took out the sniper in the garage and killed him. And she was one of the first people to get online and say, you know, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but have we just seen the first use of a lethal robot in American policing? Quickly, because she has done all that groundwork and established herself as an expert in this space. You can't see this, but it says 546 retweets and 432 likes. Now, that's great and all, nice numbers, but that's not why I'm showing you this example. One of those retweets was the New York Times. And they called her and they wanted her to speak because they were able to go back into her Twitter feed, establish that she's quite credible in this space. She's got a really amazing point of view. And the next morning she called us too. She was like, oh my God, my inbox is blowing up. We helped her navigate this space and boom, she's now a contributing voice in the New York Times about this particular issue. New York Times also continues to call her. So she's actually she's now become one of their go-to experts in this space. So she's now a frequent contributor on Slate, Mashable, Time, all sorts of other things. And then just recently she was contacted by the person who does 99% Invisible podcast, and they have started the What Trump Can Teach Us About Con Law. And so she's on the radio, on a podcast, saying, I'm Elizabeth Joe, law professor at UC Davis, every week. That's an amazing journey. Now, she's done a lot of personal commitment to this. Is this for everyone? No. Is this going to happen to everyone? No. But it shows you the potential, but also the groundwork that has been laid. Okay? So I don't want anybody to think like you're going to get on tomorrow and it's going to be great. But I want you to encourage you to, like, you know, what you put into it, you can get out of it. Okay, so now let's pause there in our values, because that kind of sets us into whatever channel we're going to do, whatever, you know, piece of, whatever we're going to do, we can kind of approach everything with those core values. Does anybody have any questions before we kind of move into the nitty-gritty tactical pieces? Do those feel right to you? Yeah? All right, well then, let's get to it.
I have a question.
How
long was Elizabeth Joe on social media before she made that post that got retweeted us?
Probably like 3 years. But like, I mean, she had other stuff like happen to her. And I mean, it's not like she was just sending it out into the cold world and only one person was reading her tweet. Like, she built it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she built it by being a really active participant with other people, not just her own point of view. That's why I encourage you to go follow her, because you'll pick up some interesting skills that you'll see her. Okay, so step one for science communicators and getting into this space. And what I'm going to take you through is a couple of steps to help you think before you go to, I need a Twitter channel before I go to Instagram or whatever. We want to think about what we're trying to accomplish first before we start talking about channels. And this is something that I think just researchers and scientists in general, already you innately have this. You're insatiably curious. So apply that same value that you probably all have, I'm assuming you have because you're awesome scientists, and put it into the social media world. So one of the things that the temptation that a lot of people have is like, I should just get on Twitter. Yeah, that's where everybody is. But you have to stop and ask yourself, is that where everybody is? Is that where people are talking about drought? Is that where people are talking about my particular research field? I don't know. Go Google it. Go Google it. Go look on Twitter. Go look on Instagram. See what you find. Go down the rabbit holes. This is something we do all the time. This is what I tell my team all the time. Go down the rabbit holes. Like, start following links. Oh, that's an interesting user. Go look at that. And then you just kind of start following all these rabbit holes and you start understanding what is the landscape of the things that I think are interesting for the people who are talking in my space, in the space that I want to be part of. You'll start identifying hashtags and content streams and blogs and authors and articles and niche publications. So, and you can start setting alerts so that stuff starts getting fed to you. Okay, even if you don't want to engage in social media, this is a good step to at least get the world start coming into your inbox, however you choose to do that. Which brings me to hashtags. Now, who's feeling a little wonky about hashtags? Yeah? Yeah? I mean, they're kind of weird because there's no hard and fast rule. But real quickly, quick definition, hashtag is actually a little piece of metacode. And it goes into Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Snapchat does not have it. But what it is it's a keyword identifier, and it classifies your content into a certain a searchable bucket. So somebody could click on that hashtag and look at all the other hashtags on that topic. For lack of a better word, it's a taxonomy, just online. Okay. So, which is really cool because when you're going back and you're looking at your rabbit holes, right? You can start seeing what hashtags people are using. You can either add your own hashtag, or you can start, you can even start a new hashtag. There's no like directory of approved hashtags, okay? People ask me that question all the time, like they are just made up and they are informal, but they can get you into searches and get you part of bigger conversations. These are some of my favorite hashtags. These is, so, you know, just making a plug for us. But SciComm is one of my all-time favorite hashtags. There's amazing people on there. They're talking about their own science, but they're also talking about how they communicate science. It's a wonderful thing. There's also Sci-Art, which I think is really interesting because it's like people doing art that's inspired by science or science that's inspired by art. It's really cool. This is what a scientist looks like. Is really interesting. This one is all about breaking barriers, about like, it's not just people in lab coats and like sterile labs, like science is messy, there's a process, it's not perfect. I love that kind of content. Science Wins, Research Selfie, STEM Squad, Real Life Scientists, STEM, Women in STEM, Scientists of Instagram, which Instagram is becoming a much bigger area for scientists to get on and share their experience. So if Twitter is not for you, consider Instagram. Real quickly, one quick note on hashtags. Don't hashtag everything. And I'll share a real example. We posted a tweet a while ago, I think it was maybe a year ago, and we're still getting our team in order. We posted about some grad students who had done some research that was like urine testing, and our social media coordinator actually hashtagged urine in the sentence, right? Like, oh, grad students make this urine testing thing, and it was like hashtag urine, and nobody wants to click on hashtag urine. Like, why? Like, what's the point of that, right? So just think critically about like how you use your, and yeah, it was like one of those moments where we all had a good laugh about it, and we're like, don't ever do that again. But it is, and actually the SACB called us out on Twitter about that. They're like, why? So just because you can, just because you can use the hashtag doesn't mean you should. So oftentimes, just like think about that. Just critically think about that before you put it in there, okay? So I share that real example with you. It was pretty funny. I actually have that tweet.
You can't click on it when it's on the can you?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They're case sensitive.
Are
they case sensitive?
No, they are not case sensitive. Often in marketing materials, or even when you're writing it into your content, people will put the cases in there so you can understand what they are. Because there is a thing in American culture where you just like have a hashtag that's like a million lines long and it's all one thing, and they're funny, and people use it to end their sentences. We try not to do that at UC Davis because I think it's a little too colloquial for us, but like this one, like if they were all undercase, you could read it. So if you're doing any marketing materials, uppercase it, but it doesn't matter. Spelling matters, but not case. Okay, so next is, okay, so we've listened, we're going down the rabbit holes of hashtags. Now it's time to focus your approach. And it's time to start thinking critically about, like, why am I on this? Why do I want to do this? There's a couple leading questions that we always think about. So one, what is the message that you're trying to share? What are you really trying to do? Are you just doing this because you're told to do it? Or are you really trying to get out there and, like, share your experience? Or it's something you're passionate about? You know, what's the unique perspective that you bring to the conversation? And you're going to answer a lot of these questions after doing a lot of that listening and researching and just poking around. You can be like, wow, there's a gap. Like, nobody's talking about this. I can't find that. That's a learning, right? That's an opportunity. Do you have access to something or someplace that most people don't? And I think that's a huge benefit for all of y'all in the room. Like, if you're out in the field, I'm a social media person. I'm sitting at a desk. I don't get to go out in the field and see what, like, the rice fields out and on the causeway look like, or, like, you know, cheetahs out in the wild, or, like, whatever it is. Like, that's so cool. Like, science is really amazing. And the messy part of science is also really cool too. And I think people find a lot of interest in that. And there's something humanizing about that too. Do you have visual opportunities? Not everybody does. Some people are working on research that are like computational models. That's really hard to visualize. On this stuff, you also have to be careful, like, what's not on here is, what can you not talk about? Be sure you identify what that is. You might be working on some research that isn't ready to be published. You can't talk about certain things, so know your limitations. If you're taking a picture in a lab, make sure there's no proprietary stuff behind you or around you, okay, in an image. So there's some things that you have to consider there too. Okay, so now once you've made some of these bigger decisions and you kind of got your compass in order, now it's time to start talking about your channel of choice. Now, I think a lot of people, when they talk to me about social media, they go right into Twitter, because Twitter, I would say, is like your most extreme, like, social media. But there's a lot of other options, and you should be aware that just to be part of social media conversation doesn't mean you have to be here, okay? You have the opportunity to blog. So this is Medium, which is a wonderful blogging platform, but there's others. There's WordPress, or you can co-write blogs with other people. It's longer format. It's for more in-depth thinking and link backs and, like, real deep thinking, right? It's not so short term. It's more professional. It's a little less personal. It's the time commitment we say is about once a week. That's a big time commitment if you're doing long form stuff, okay? The disadvantages of blogging, just really candidly, slow to build community and traffic. So just because you build it doesn't mean you're going to have all the traffic inflow. So there's no built-in audience, and there's a longer time commitment, a larger time commitment. LinkedIn. A lot of people aren't thinking about LinkedIn, but it can be really effective, especially if you're doing LinkedIn groups. And there's influencers and policymakers, connections on there. And don't worry, guys, I'll send this stuff to you. You guys can have all this stuff, so don't worry about taking pictures. So LinkedIn, longer format, you can have in-depth thinking. It's tied to your professional account. It has a built-in audience. It's not as active, though. So just be aware. Twitter, advantages. Short format, link heavy. It's highly engaging. It's fast. It's moving. Are you responsible for reading every tweet that's ever out there? No. You dip in, you dip out, right? And that's part of the Twitter culture. It blends a lot of professional and some personal. It's kind of on your own time. So if you're brushing your teeth in the morning and you want to get on Twitter and do a couple likes, you can do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, waiting for coffee, kind of on your own time. We save the time commitment at least once a day, but you can do real short time commitments, right? Disadvantage, it's addictive. It's way more open to those, to people you don't know. We've all heard the news stories about bots and fake stuff. Like, that's happening on Twitter because there's no filter for who can be on there and who can't. You have a higher risk of trolling. So if you want to engage in the space, do it with discretion. Instagram, short format advantage. It's all image and video based. Sometimes you don't even need very many words. You just need a great picture. There's a budding scientific community on here. It's super discoverable. It tends to be a lot friendlier, less trolling, mostly because it's tied to a person's account. And the time commitment, we say like 3 times a week. Disadvantages, no links. So if you're trying to drive traffic back to a website or a blog or something like that, Instagram's not your jam. not yet at least. I don't think it ever will be because that's how they're keeping it nice. But images and videos are required. So if you don't really have like the time or you're not out in the field or you don't have a lot of visual opportunities, Instagram might be something you maybe not consider, but it's out there. We're also having more people do Snapchat, but we're not going to talk about Snapchat. That's boring. Okay, so any questions here? Wrap it up?
Speed up, just speed up.
Speed up. Okay. And we're going to do an exercise about this. So once you've taken the stock of everything and you know where your audiences are and you want to start engaging, the first thing you need to do is get your house in order. So this is actually a common misstep, but filling out your profile to the completeness and having a profile image and this image instead of like the little Twitter egg or whatever is autofilled helps people understand that you're a real person. You're not a bot, and you're like legit. And we're actually going to go through an exercise and we're going to build our bios together. Put in any links, and most importantly, I want to highlight this for everybody in this room. Disclaimer of where you work. Okay, it's really important that you say something like, my tweets are my own, or, you know, I work at UC Davis, because you have an interest, you work at UC Davis, tweets are my own. You don't represent UC Davis unless you do, which there are very few of us that actually do, right? Or I'm, you know, I work at whatever department. It's just important to be really transparent and clear about who you are and what your interests are.
So what does this disclaimer look like for department Twitter accounts? Because it's usually an individual that manages it.
Yeah, you don't need a disclaimer.
You don't just
As long as you're clear about who you are and what the department is and how to get like a link. You don't need a disclaimer. If you're an individual, like my Twitter handle, I have a disclaimer in there, even though especially because I'm social media for UC Davis. Okay, real easy. It doesn't have to be big. Just tweets are my own is enough, and where you work. Okay, unless you really don't want that to be part of what you talk about. But if it is, then you need to disclaim it. Okay, another best practice that we are noticing is to be personable online. And I say ish because as an individual, if you're all in the personal bucket, then it's all personal. But if you're all in the professional bucket, you're missing the connective human tissue or connective nature that people need to make relationships and go back to that kind of party building scenario. You're building relationships. So this little sweet spot right here where you have a little bit of personal and mostly professional is what is really effective, because people want to connect with people. They don't want to connect with robots. So just keep that as a core value. And then say something meaningful. We're going to go through a couple of quick examples of what that looks like. So you can, I don't know if anybody went to the other trainings, but you can revisit your message box, you know, that message box if you filled that out. Share your daily life, ask for feedback, give behind the scenes looks, and we talked about what conferences you go to. Consider live video, because sometimes like blogging is too long. Maybe a quick live video of you sharing what happened in your day. It's a great way to create a really meaningful piece of content without a lot of work. And it doesn't have to look beautiful. It can just be on your phone. Back to Ann Hilborn. She's my favorite. She's just one of my favorites. She doesn't take herself seriously, but she's a really serious woman scientist in this field. And I just love this example when she's collecting cheetah poop and fieldwork fail. And then she created the hashtag distractingly sexy. It's just funny, and it just shows a human part of the researchers. I'll show you a couple of other quick examples. This is a botanist in Oregon, and he just takes beautiful photos of flowers, and then each one of his entries has like all the scientific information about it. I mean, it's just so visually pleasing, but it also is, he's got 11,000 followers. And it's his passion. Great use of his talent there. This is actually somebody at UC Davis. Person doesn't know I use this example, but he tagged UC Davis, so I feel like I can. So I love this example because this is about just diversity and showing like this is what a scientist looks like. And I love this example. Again, another Instagram example about how people are getting on there and using this is a great example. Again, another one on Instagram. This one isn't from a researcher specifically, but I like this example because even though you might not be out in the field or taking beautiful pictures of flowers, there's still things to show about the process. And you can't read any of this even if you zoomed in. So he was very clever to not give away any proprietary information, but it also shows like that kind of the messy side, which I think personally we need to continue to educate the public about, because people have a lot of demands about scientists. You have to know exactly what it is, or you have to be predictive of the future. And I think that's one of the things that UC Davis we're trying to really highlight is that it's a process. It's an adventure. It's about a question. It's not always about answers. And so I love this example. Quick example about Medium. So this is a grad student. She works at the Bodega Marine Life Institute, or the Bodega Marine place. Sorry, I'm chilling. Thank you, Lord. End of the day on Friday. She wrote this great piece on Medium, and right before the science marches happened, New York Times called her and was like, hey, we want to profile you as one of the young scientists who were marching, and they did this really amazing 360 piece with her. And she called us, and we helped do all that stuff, but like, it was awesome. Like, they found her on Medium. It's great. Expanding your community. So I noticed a lot of the comments from folks today for this session were about like expanding your following base. If you don't have advertising dollars, like there's no like magic bullet. Usually the magic bullet is buy an ad to get followers, honestly. But since we don't spend money that way, and not even UC Davis spends money that way, we have to do the old-fashioned way, which is the relationship way. Okay, that means if somebody follows us, we follow them back. Yay, one more follower. Or if they are talking about us and they haven't followed us, we'll follow them and they'll follow us back. Ooh, one more follower, right? So we're just doing it the old-fashioned organic way. So some other things that you can do is like and share other people's content. So go outside of your channel and your bubble, right? And go see what other people are talking about that's relevant to you and follow them. Most likely they will follow you back across platforms. Okay. The other thing is, this seems really simple, but say hello. So if somebody has taken the time to like or comment anything that you've done, you should go back to them and say, thank you, hello, welcome, nice to meet you. I mean, come on, this is like normal human behavior. But for some reason, like on social media, like we feel like that's weird or something. But like, I just challenge everybody to start thinking about that. We don't do this yet, but we're hoping to, is leaving comments and answering questions in other people's content. So I read a blog about something that I really enjoy, I leave a comment, or there's a question I can answer because you're an expert. Go out there. Then people will be like, ooh, who's this person? Oh, and then they go back, they found your blog, they found your Twitter. So that's how you start building a community, and it's really actually about reaching out outside of your own bubble, okay? And then participate with hashtag movements, that's a huge one. This is just a real quick example from Katie Mack. She's huge on Twitter, she's amazing. One thing I love about her, I mean, great, she puts up a beautiful photo of galaxies. Of course, you're gonna get a bunch of likes and retweets about it, but more importantly in this post, look, she answers every single question or comment. Every single one. She's huge on Twitter. She doesn't need any new followers. She's got like something like 20,000 people that follow her, probably more, but she still takes the time, and that's the connective tissue, that's that relationship building, okay? A couple of quick other engagement tips specifically for scientists. Really try to avoid your jargon unless you're talking with people that can speak that language. Talk with people instead of at them. Make the time. Don't be stingy with your likes, comments, and shares. I get a lot of questions about, like, should I like this or should I not like this? If you like it, okay? Yeah, like especially like that's so like low bar, right? It's low bar, man. Like everything, it's all good. Give credit to others when due. So like, don't steal a photo and put it up. Don't share your proprietary information in your lab or outside of your lab. Be sure to ask that. here's the one that I always love, which seems so practical, and yet it isn't. If you don't want your post repeated 1,000 times, don't post it, okay? Every single time I post anything, personally or on behalf of our executive or on behalf of diversity, I hover over that post button a second. Be like, if the New York Times picked this up, would I be happy or would I be embarrassed? Okay? If it's I'd be happy, boom. If I'd be embarrassed, I better rethink that. Okay? It's a pretty core thing. I mean, it's really simple. That will really help you avoid a lot of mistakes. Okay? Don't give up. Okay? And last, I'll just say, if the media do contact you, if you do get that wonderful moment when that happens, whether that's tomorrow or that's 3 years from now, you have a team to support you. Okay? You don't have to do it alone. You either have a communicator that works in your department, or you can reach out to StratCom. That is our job, is to help you get into that and do your best job in front of the media. So, and Jay, I know you're a pro, so you don't need to contact us anymore, but we have people who this is what they do. Okay.
They're very good at it. They'll give you very good advice.
Oh, good. Thanks.
When I first started to do this, they gave me very good advice. Please do make use of that.
I paid him to say that. No, thank you, Jay. And just real quick too, like, just be sure to, like, every once in a while, just make it a habit to look at your privacy settings. Okay, they change a little bit, but it's just always important to make sure, especially if you're out there as a person, like, just check on them every once in a while.
You all usually also, I think, have like a one-pager of advice to people when you first get contacted by the media.
Yes, we do.
That you might want to
Absolutely
have access to that, because sometimes you don't have, they'll contact you right away and they've got you on the phone.
Yeah.
It's nice to have something maybe on your wall.
Yeah.
If you're working on something big that might be media bait.
Yes. Media bait. I like that.
Just to prepare yourself.
Yeah.
Some malice aforethought.
Yeah, and also I will say that if any media contacts you via Twitter or a call or an email, the best thing to do in that situation is to say, I got your message. One, what's your deadline? And I need a couple minutes to get prepared. Okay? Never will they be like, it's important to say that you got it and you're gonna get back to them, but you don't ever have to call them back right away. Or if you pick up the phone and they're like, oh, it's the New York Times, I want to talk to you right now, all you have to say is like, I'm finishing something up, what's your deadline? And I'll get back to you. That's when you put the phone down and you either prepare yourself or you give us a call. Okay? And we've worked with, and most journalists like totally respect that. There's very little situation where they're like, I only have 5 minutes to get this quote. Like, that hardly ever happens. And if they say that, they're usually not being truthful. Okay, one quick note on the trolls. Again, we talked about you're going to take the risk. Like, there is risk and responsibility in engaging in this space. But a couple quick notes. One, if you do get trolled or doxxed, like, just call me or send me an email. I've got your back. We can help you get out of this. Two, don't take the bait. Not all trolls are even human. Okay, and we're definitely learning that now as more information is coming out about how there's a lot of fake accounts and the Russian troll, like all that stuff. But sometimes they just troll you and then they go away. So a lot of them aren't even real accounts. They just are triggered versus certain words. So if you're getting lots of things about global warming, I would guarantee you at least 20% of those are not real people. So you kind of just like, shrug it off, hide it, moderate that comment, move on. If you feel like, oh my God, this is like getting really big, like sleep on it, because sometimes it goes away. Use the block button. Go ahead and use that block button. There's nobody preventing you from doing that. That's what it's for. And who cares if they come back and say that you blocked them? Like, come on. We care if we're UC Davis because we don't want to seem like we're like doing that, but we have blocked people because we've seen some questionable things. And report the account if it's really, really bad, if it's really harassing. And again, we are here to help you with that. Okay, I'm gonna hand out my card too. Okay, that's it for me. Megan, did I go too far over my time?
Nope, you're right on time.
Okay. Whew. All right, there's a lot of questions. Obviously, social media is really big, and So what I'm hoping that we can do in this next part, we're going to go through 2 exercises. Okay. So the first one is a little document that I'm going to pass out. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about it. But this is a planning document. This is actually a document I use for a lot of my clients. And it's a blueprint. Thank you, Jay. Nice to see you. Yep. And breaks. Yeah. And if you need bio breaks and stuff, you guys just take them because we still have another 45 minutes here. So this document is just a series of guiding questions. Okay. So this is, has anybody heard the term like building my brand, building my personal brand? This document helps you think through those key questions to help guide you on what your brand is. Now, this document also can be, if you replace the word with like me or my or the personal pronouns with our or this organization, you can use this for an organization as well. It's extremely helpful thought exercise, okay? So there's a couple of things that I'm just gonna ask everybody to kind of take a peek at and start thinking about how to, if you were to move into this space professionally, how would you answer these questions, okay? So who am I trying to build relationships with? Where is my community online? That, you might not know the answer right off the bat, but that's where you go and you follow those rabbit holes and those hashtags and those searches to go find where they are. They might not be on Twitter. They might be all on Reddit, right? What are the hashtags that are being used? What makes me excited about my work? Why does it matter? What's the scientific question I'm trying to answer with my work? So anyway, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I share this with you because this has been, anytime I get approached with, can you build me a channel? Can you build me a social media something? Can you write me a plan? Should I be on this channel? This is where I start. I start by asking questions. So I'll kind of just leave this to you guys. Do you have any questions about that particular document? Yeah.
Can I tweet this for scientists to use?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, of course. And actually, yes. I will also send out the link to the, or provide
send everything to me and I'll send it out.
Yeah, we'll provide the deck for everyone too. It's all open. Like I said, I'm not stingy. Not stingy with my likes, not stingy with my decks and my tools. So, yeah.
Also, don't forget to fill out the feedback form. It'll only take a minute. So if you're not working on this, fill out the feedback form or fill out the feedback form first and then come back to this.
Yeah, we have one more exercise actually. And that is, we're gonna all sit down and think about writing our Twitter bio. Okay. So this is UC Davis's Twitter bio and kind of our profile. You have about 160 characters. It might change. I don't know if they've changed the character count on bios. But this is often the first impression that people get of your page if it's not your logo. So and you can get kind of creative and fun in here, and it's supposed to be like 160 characterization of like who you are and why somebody should follow you. So I was thinking everybody could pull out a pen or think about it, and we could do some quick exercises. If no one's interested in that, we can move into a live environment and just start taking any crazy questions you guys might have, technical or not. I brought in a lightning cord so I can actually plug in my phone and show you any live scenarios as well. Yeah, no?
I had a question.
Yeah.
Or a comment.
Okay.
So last time I was on Twitter, it was 2014.
Yeah.
And I remember that bios, they were like popular with the like one word period, another word, traveler period, scientist.
Oh my God, that's my bio.
Oh. Yeah. I was gonna ask that like acceptable still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything's acceptable. I've seen all sorts of funky, fun things in bios. So.
What would you recommend, I guess, having like a separate one or a separate profile for like science communication versus like personal life. So oftentimes there's a lot. Well, I mean, we're all people, but there's not a lot of overlap between like your friends and like their tweets and stuff.
Yeah. That is a really interesting question that is getting harder and harder to answer. One, I think it's up to your own personal comfort level. So if you want to have that hard break between professional and personal, that's up to you. I will say though, in today's like converging media landscape, if you will, it's getting harder and harder to pull them apart. And some of the strength of your professional account is also your personal. So I think, I know I'm wavering a lot on that question, but it's up to you. I know people who do both, but know that people can find you on both. So you either have to have a pseudonym for your other personal account, which feels a little weird, or maybe it doesn't feel weird. Maybe that's cool and that's how you want it. So I personally don't do that because I think, whatever I put up personally could also be seen professionally. So I'm just extremely cautious about that. Now, because I used to work for Coca-Cola a long time ago, or like Mars or like other accounts, like I used to be so careful as to not have Pepsi product in my pictures, right? So I don't think you have to be that cautious, but, and I don't think I would be that cautious now, but that personal professional blend is getting fuzzier. So, sorry, does anybody else have any thoughts about that?
I would say think about who you want to follow as well. Like,
yeah,
because I have like a very professional Twitter, and if people I'm following start posting really personal stuff like, oh, Kim Kardashian did something great, I unfollow. That's not what I'm there for. So think about that as well. Like, it might, if you want to do that, then maybe you do want to school people. What would you want to see on your Twitter account? Do you want to see a really strong message, or do you want that to be fun?
Yeah, I would say on my, so I have a Facebook account and a Twitter account, but on my Facebook account, like, that's where I put pictures of my kids. And,
yeah.
I do not, like, share pictures of my children on Twitter because that world is ruthless and unhinged.
Yeah. And I follow a very similar approach. So one, my personal Twitter is really boring. Okay, even though I'm a professional in this, like I'm super boring on Twitter, and that's mostly because I'm tweeting on behalf of a lot of other channels, and the last thing I want to do is personally get on Twitter. But my Facebook, very personal. My Instagram, even more personal, because like even more lockdown. It's like pictures of my kids. Twitter, work. LinkedIn, work. So you can do it by channel. My Snapchat is like pathetic, but like very casual, and it's very small. So like you can play with different aspects of your personality via channel versus having multiple Facebook pages where it's like you have different aliases. That's where it feels like a little bit more uncomfortable because it's like what name are you going under today? Are you being like are you being like Khaleesi one day, and so what it does though is it kind of undermines trust of followers too. So just be aware of that. But it's a personal choice.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
what happens, so I've been on Twitter since April, not that long.
Yeah, but you're a power user.
I know, but it's genetics. But I'm wondering, so one of like the rules I set for myself on Twitter is like not to like political things, like not to like the things that are really on clutter me after some time. But then I started wondering, like, are the only people who I'm reaching through Twitter are people who would listen to me anyway? Like, what happens if you want to take what you're doing and kind of get out there and echo change your community, the people who choose your community? That seems harder and harder to do that.
It is, and I think it's a very intentional choice to go out and seek other forums. And I would say not even just within the Twitter environment, like searching and hashtags is the best way, I think, because you can start pushing your own bubble out a little bit, because if you're just searching, SciComm all the time, you're just going to be fed the same kind of content with the same kind of people, the same kind of environment. But if you start really pushing out and seeing what other places and people there are, that's one place. The other thing is that, again, I think hopefully I've not hammered this too much, but just getting outside of Twitter can sometimes help you expand your channel. So like blogs or other things that you find interesting that you're like, hey, I like you, author. You might be on Twitter, and here, or other commenters might be interesting that can push out, and even like Quora or other forums can help you pull people back into your Twitter channel, but also get you outside of your bubble. So I think it's really important, because I think people get really siloed, and I fall into this trap too. I've been working in this for like 12 years and I still do this. It's like Twitter followers, well, then I have to go on Twitter and I have to do this, but it's much bigger systems than that. Like, I don't know very many people who are only on one channel. So you have to kind of think cross-platform that way. Mm-hmm.
So for like a power user, and
Power user.
what's like a reasonable time commitment for social media? Because to do anything right requires lots of time, but also being in front of a rectangle all the time sucks.
Yes, it's true. Being in front of the screen, and I'm 100% the worst at it. We often joke. It's actually Carla that has the. Are you talking about the brushing teeth?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So my colleague Carla has this advice. She's a Twitter power user, and like too much. So so her advice is when she's brushing her teeth, she'll just like brush her teeth and she'll just check Twitter while she's brushing her teeth, and that's twice a day, and it's 5 minutes, and she does a lot of retweets, a lot of likes, and then maybe she will think of something clever to post up, or she sees a link that she'll retweet or quote. It's really like, it's crazy because she's a power user, and like that's literally all she does, or maybe during lunchtime or when she's in line with her coffee. But little snippets of time, which is kind of why, if you think of Twitter as this thing like, oh my God, I've got to keep up on everything all the time, you will lose. If you think of Twitter as this big ocean that you just dip in, you dip out, you dip in, you dip out, it's fun. It's cool. So you don't have to have a big time commitment for Twitter, actually.
I can understand that for like looking at hashtags and browsing feeds, but for creating content, I mentioned, thinking about all of this whole process, to have develop a system level understanding, and then drill down on what you think is the most effective piece of information to like throw in there. It's like
It'll get easier.
It takes a lot.
Yeah, it does get easier the more you get into it. For things like blogging, especially if you're not the one that's like hosting and owning the blog, you could do that twice a year, right? You could do LinkedIn posts once or twice every month, but with intention. You can be pretty effective. For Instagram, you could go as light as one post a week and still be really effective. We say 3 posts a week for maximum efficiency to keep the cadence going, but you can get away with once a week. So like, yes, time commitment with social media, it's there. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. I think a lot of people think that like you can just do it for 2 minutes and get like all this amazing stuff out of it. It is what you put into it. But you can start small. Start playing with it. Don't be intimidated by it. It is meant to be a space to be like experimenting in. And then you'll see what sticks for you personally or not. You might abandon Twitter, and that's okay. Okay? That is okay. It happens all the time. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on scheduling posts?
Yeah.
So like you set out a block of time, like an hour a week, to write out all your posts, schedule them to go live at certain times. Specifically with Instagram. I don't know. We haven't done it before. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it on behalf of an organization and you've got like certain things you want to say, absolutely. Scheduling is amazing because you just kind of focus in on it and you go. Where you lose with scheduling is sometimes context. So I'll give you another example. Like this actually happens to us a lot, where we have our week scheduled out from UC Davis. We know what we're going to say on all of our channels, and then there's a mass shooting in Las Vegas, and suddenly that piece about the coho new offering is really toned down, right? So we have to go back and look at what we scheduled and say, okay, that doesn't work in the context of the world anymore. So with scheduling, you just have to be aware of that and check it every once in a while and be like, do we still want that to go out on Tuesday? Will that feel like I scheduled it and walked away? So that's the only thing I would say with that. With Instagram, you have that opportunity because there's no platform that just automatically schedules it. It goes to your phone and then you post it, so you have an opportunity to change it before it officially goes live. But you should use every tool in your arsenal, just with intention and careful thought. Yeah.
So does UC Davis recommend that departments have individual Twitter accounts?
I never make a blanket recommendation like that. It's only if you have the resources, the time, and your audience is there. Your audience might not be on Twitter, and it's okay to not be on Twitter. Okay, but if you're gonna do that, then you have to think about the long term. Because what happens, especially here at UC Davis, so when I first got here, I went through the task of trying to map out how many channels UC Davis has. I don't have the answer, to be honest, 2 years later. What I've been able to map out is close to 500 different accounts. A lot of them dead. Because a lot of people start that because their boss told them that they need to be on Twitter or something. And then they leave, or they give it to a student and that student leaves and then it's dead and then they don't have passwords. And so you just have to think about longevity with it. If you're going to do it well. Also, avoid the temptation to do all channels if you're going to do it on a department behalf. You can do one really well, that's always going to be way more effective than doing 10. Just stretches your resources. We have to do it at UC Davis. One, because I inherited that. Somebody created all the accounts for us. Thanks a lot. No, just kidding. But also because when we looked at the landscape of who's talking about UC Davis, it was happening on all channels. So for us, we intentionally have to be on those because we have to be part of that conversation. We can't have that conversation happening and not be part of it. The only one that we don't really do actively is Pinterest. There you have it.
You're sitting this gear for your dorm room.
Yeah. I actually handed it over to the people that do gear. So science stories on Pinterest, it's just, yeah.
So do you want to show us how it works on your phone?
Sure. Would you guys like that? Okay. Let me get my.
I have a piece of advice for anyone who's thinking about starting a Twitter but hasn't. Choose Twitter handle. Think about that. So I was actually recently talking to someone who works at Twitter, and they asked me what my Twitter handle was verbally, and it's my name. My name is hard to spell, and I have an accent, so let it sound different when I say it. So telling someone what it was actually really hard. It's fine when I can give it to them written, or if I just do a thing, or there's a QR code I can get them to scan, but think about your handle when you're making it. I told them,
What is your handle? I mean,
what is the handle?
Yeah, is that just the hashtag UC Davis?
That's my username.
That's the username.
Yeah, I'll show you.
At
Yeah.
UC Davis.
Yeah.
And look after the @ symbol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how you tag people. So you add them.
Yeah. Okay, let's go through. Let's just do it. Let's do Twitter.
So yeah, Sallie will walk us through it all.
That's a really good point because my favorite thing is to get my boss emailed me. Can you get me something before 4? Nope. Hold on. Before I plug in my phone, let me answer her.
Well, we're waiting. This
Sorry.
is a great opportunity for you to fill out the feedback form. Take out your phones. Do the feedback form. It's online. Yeah. So let me bring up the URL again.
If you guys want an automatic follower, if you follow Delta Council,
There you go.
There it is. Start up there. Please fill that out. Much appreciated. Yep. It's a live link. And yeah, same paper.